a conversation. Tell me what you think about the issues of the world. What kind of spice you wanna be? Tell me where you wanna travel. Do you believe in luxury? What's your hidden passion? What makes you so unique? Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole.
Greetings, this is Nicole Everett with Conversations with Nicole, and today we are here at the Edison Restaurant in Cascade Park with my special guest, Sheriff Walt McNeil. Welcome, Sheriff McNeil.
My pleasure, Nicole. Thank you.
So you are newly elected to the sheriff's position, which is a great deal for Tallahassee. You've been involved in this area for many years, in law enforcement for about 35 years?
Almost 40 years
Okay,
now.
okay,
Getting
almost
close
40
to
years.
40 years.
Wow. And this is a great position. You previously worked with Tallahassee Police Department, with Department of Corrections, with the Juvenile Justice, so you kind of have a unique experience and background in law enforcement. But I want you to talk to me today about the importance of law enforcement in the Tallahassee community.
Well, Nicole, it is the most visible aspect of a community, quite honestly. Any community in the country you go into, you'll see police cars. They ride around mostly like billboards, and they announce the fact that you're in whatever particular city you're in. And one of the things that we come to expect as relates to law enforcement in the community is we, in some cases, impact the community in terms of what its reputation is. In fact, when a business decides that it wants to relocate to a particular area, the first thing they do is they ask, what's the crime like in that community?
Yes.
What are the job opportunities in that community? What is the education level of
What
the
are the
folks in the
schools
community?
like?
What are the schools like?
Right.
And we understand that. We in the Leon County Sheriff's Office understand that we have a role to play in terms of fostering the kind of community that people would want to move to and live in. And to accomplish that, we talk mostly about first understanding the level of transparency that needs to take place within our community, within our sheriff's office, and that we have to make sure that we're partnering with our other law enforcement partners, but equally important that we are engaged with our community on an ongoing basis so that we foster that whole concept of neighborhood and community.
Yes.
And law enforcement, in my estimation, is a central part of all of that in terms of how we drive home that message of safety and inclusion of all people, of all racial backgrounds and ethnicity within our communities. So it's, I think law enforcement is central to most of our communities.
Excellent point. So let me expound upon that a little bit. So you talked about public safety. You talked about all ethnic backgrounds. Now there have been some incidences nationwide where law enforcement with minorities have ended in fatal situations. What is the Sheriff's Department doing to help mitigate some of that? And not that we've had any incidents here in Leon County, but I'm sure there's a heightened awareness within your organization. So what are you all doing to help mitigate some of that?
So what we try to do is to create an environment where our deputies and other law enforcement agencies in our community have relationships, not only among themselves, our fellow law enforcement partners, but also with our churches, with our community leaders, so that the first time we have an event take place isn't the first time that people come together. One of the things that we have historically done here, and you indicated I've been in Tallahassee virtually all my adult life, so one of the background things we've done is to make sure that if we have a significant event take place in Tallahassee, one of the first things that I'm going to do is to call those pastors and leaders in our community and let them know firsthand that we've got a situation taking place. And those circumstances of having that open dialogue and that open communication drives home the point over and over again that your police department is not an island unto itself, that it belongs to the citizens of our community. And we have to do through our training, we have to also send a message to our deputies and our officers that, as Sir Robert Peel said many, many years ago, that the police are the citizens and the citizens are the police. We are one and the same. And
I like that.
Just the fact that you wear a uniform and you carry a gun and you have a badge does not necessarily set you apart. It simply says that you have a specific responsibility to carry out that has been given to you by the citizens of that community.
Okay. We're going to take a break right here, but when we come back, I wanted to talk some more about the responsibility of law enforcement.
All right.
Okay. Stay tuned for more conversations.
This portion of Conversations with Nicole is sponsored by Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare.
Welcome back. We are here at the Edison and Cascade Park, and my special guest is Sheriff Walt McNeil of the Leon County Sheriff's Office. And before the break, we were talking about law enforcement and their responsibility in the community and engaging with them in the community. So, Sheriff McNeil, you have rolled out a strategic plan, and I want you to talk about some of the highlights of that plan.
Oh, happy to. First, we took a snapshot of our community based on the Uniform Crime Report that basically said that Leon County has, during the 2015-2016, had some of the highest crime rates in the state of Florida. And using that as a backdrop or part of our concern, we focused and put together a strategic plan that tried to address how do we go about effectively driving down the crime in our community. And from that discussion and those discussions by my staff and other citizens who were engaged in supporting our strategic initiative, we came up with what we call the All-In Initiative. And Nicole, that basically says that we in law enforcement can't do that by ourselves. It is going to require all of us, the citizens of Tallahassee, Leon County, along with our business community, with our schools, and with families, identifying what those root causes of crimes are in our community. And we know for a fact that where there's poverty, crime usually follows right behind it. And so we've embarked upon several initiatives. One, to identify those communities in our city and our county that are at most risk. And we've looked at 3 specific areas, and that's the Bond community, the Griffin Heights community, and what we call South City. And we're working with the Tallahassee Police Department, Florida State University, Florida A&M University, and obviously the Sheriff's Office, and with some of our federal partners to try to identify what the problems are and connect those social service organizations in our community with those particular needs where there are kids involved, and to try to find businesses that are willing to support persons coming back in our community, particularly those who have been incarcerated for a number of years. We have something on the magnitude of over 600 persons who are coming back into our community each year who've been incarcerated. And those persons come back without great prospects of being employed. And we want to do what we can to bridge that gap and get those persons employed, because we know that will help drive down
I know
crime.
there's some reentry resources here locally that may be able to assist with that, so that would be a good partnership.
Yes, we are partnering with the Ready for Work initiative at Bethel Baptist Church with Reverend Holmes, and that's a great initiative. On the other side of that, we also realize, Nicole, that we have to step up our enforcement. And so we worked with the Tallahassee Police Department to put together a task force specifically directed at property crimes in our community. There was a significant uptick in property crime, and specifically an increase in the number of cars that were both stolen and broken into in Leon County. And we focused on those particular crimes. And quite honestly, right now, I am very optimistic that we will be able to drive down some of those property crimes. And our interaction with the Tallahassee Police Department has been nothing short of outstanding.
Great.
And we believe through those partnerships with both our law enforcement partners and the community, and I can't overemphasize the relationships we're building in communities and our community outreach and the citizens who are willing to work with us in an effort to drive down crime.
What advice would you give citizens with engaging with a sheriff? Give me just like 3 tips. And with engaging with a sheriff, what should a citizen do?
When they're engaging with one of the sheriff deputies on the streets?
On the
Yes.
streets.
Well, first and foremost, it obviously depends on what circumstances you're engaging
So say it's
with.
a traffic stop.
Traffic stops, we always say to citizens, obviously the officer or deputy stopped you for a reason. And let that deputy come up and articulate what those reasons are. Make sure that in the conversation with the deputy or the officer, one of the things we always talk about is hands. Police officers, law enforcement persons are very engaged and concerned about where your hands are. So obviously keep your hands on the steering wheel. When asked to do various things, do whatever it is that officer asks you to do. If he says, give me your license, if you're carrying a weapon in the car, and that's sometimes a problem, tell the officer that you do have a weapon in the vehicle. Ask him or her how you should go about identifying and bringing that weapon into his consciousness, and follow those instructions. It's not the time and the place while you're in the situation to try to negotiate your way out of a ticket.
Very good. Thank you for those tips. I appreciate you spending time with us today, and I wish you all the best in your new position.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Stay tuned for more conversations. So, Mutaqee, in dealing with law enforcement, what advice would you give your clients if they are stopped for instance, for a traffic stop? Greetings! Today's CWN Medical Moment features diabetes. Today we're talking with Dr. Omodele Hogan at the TMH Metabolic Health Center. Welcome, Dr. Hogan.
Thank you.
Now tell me, this center has been open since January. Give me the official name of the center.
So it's actually Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare Physician Partners Metabolic Health Center. And I know it's a handful, but you can just call it MHC or TMH Metabolic Health Center.
Okay, and what's housed here?
So we actually, it's really neat. It's sort of a one-stop shop. So we have adult and pediatric endocrinology, and then we also have our diabetes educators in-house, which is really neat. In addition to that, we have bariatrics, which is sort of weight loss, obesity medicine, and then we also have lipid specialists. So they see patients with complex cholesterol issues, and they address those as well.
Okay, so let's talk about diabetes.
Okay.
There are different types.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the different types?
Absolutely. So there's type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes we tend to see in children, but you can also have it later on in life. But typically we tend to see it in young children. And it was previously called juvenile diabetes, but now we just call it type 1 diabetes. And those patients, their body no longer produces insulin, usually because the immune system has attacked the cells that make insulin, so they no longer produce insulin and therefore become diabetic.
Gotcha.
And type 2 diabetes is actually the more common type that we see, and that we tend to see in older, overweight or obese adults. In those patients, they still produce insulin, but their body has difficulty using the insulin that their body produces because they're resistant to the insulin that their body produces. So we call that insulin resistance. And those are really the two types, the two big types of diabetes.
So what are some indicators that you might be diabetic?
Okay, so some of the symptoms that might clue you into a diagnosis of diabetes would include polyuria, which would be excessive urination, and then polydipsia, which is excessive thirst. So usually we ask patients, oh, are you thirsty all the time, peeing all the time? And they'll say yes. Sometimes people also lose weight unintentionally, and that can actually be a sign of diabetes. And then also in some type 1s, they present with a condition called DKA, and that stands for diabetic ketoacidosis.
Okay.
In that state, then they might actually present with very vague symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain. And most people think that they just have a stomach virus, but it's actually important to know that that could also be a sign of
diabetes.
Of diabetes and DKA, which is actually one of our diabetic emergencies that usually requires patients to go to the hospital and get intravenous insulin.
So what's some treatment for these conditions?
So with type 1 diabetics who basically no longer produce insulin, then the treatment in that case is insulin. Now there is another medication called Insulin, which we use every now and then, but the mainstay is insulin. While with type 2 diabetes, sometimes we start with just lifestyle, which is we usually recommend aerobic exercise,
So
about 30
exercise.
minutes, 5 days a week,
Okay.
which would be about 150 minutes of aerobic exercise a week. And then we tell them to basically cut back on their carbohydrate intake.
diet.
Yes, exactly. Diet changes.
Okay.
So exercise, change your diet, try to lose weight. We start with that. And if we can't get the diabetes under control with those measures, then we move to their pills that we use to treat diabetes. And then if that really doesn't work, then we can proceed to using insulin.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that medical
Oh,
moment
you're
with us. We
welcome.
appreciate it. Stay tuned for more conversations. Welcome back to Conversations with Nicole. We're here at the Edison in Cascade Park, and my special guest now is Attorney Mutaqee Akbar. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Mutaqee, you've been practicing law for how long?
I've been practicing for 14 years now.
Okay, and you do criminal and personal injury.
Correct. Yeah.
And we want to focus on the criminal side.
Okay.
So tell me about some of the stuff that you see in terms of your clients, and
I see everything.
you see everything.
Yeah, we handle everything from traffic tickets all the way up to murder cases now.
Okay.
And the facts are always different. It's always something new. Every time you think you've seen it all, it comes through the door. And in seeing that, we deal with a lot of issues, dealing with law enforcement, dealing with searches, just people's personal problems, drug problems, family problems. Everything is encompassed in criminal cases. And so
Right.
we try to deal with everything on, each case is different, and we deal with all the issues.
So do you, if you could give some advice to folks in terms of criminal issues, things that they could possibly avoid from getting in a situation that they need your services, what would you advise them of?
Most of it is if it's too good to be true, then it's probably a scam. One thing that we see a lot of is with college students, especially, falling for things like, hey, I'm gonna give you, this, can I get your credit card, or can I get your ATM card? I'm gonna deposit some money in it, I'll give you some of it, just bring me back the rest. That's a scam. And, so these get-rich-quick schemes can land you in jail. And so that's one of the things, that just be smart. Second, we all know right from wrong. So the simple things: don't sell drugs, don't steal, don't shoot somebody.
That's a simple thing. Don't sell drugs.
Yeah,
huh?
those simple things can keep you out of jail as well. And it's not worth it. I had a sentencing just yesterday with a guy who was, charged with selling drugs, and he realized the minute he got arrested, or the minute that he got stopped, he had a heart problem, and he knew if he went to prison that would be it would be devastating for him, because prison can't really take care of serious illnesses. So if the judge would have sentenced him to prison, then that could have been fatal.
Right.
So simple things like that, just kind of thinking about, if I get caught, what happens? What happens to my family? What happens to everybody else? That can kind of pull people back. It might be harder to work construction, but you don't have to look over your shoulder to work a construction job.
Right, exactly. So, Mutaqee, in dealing with law enforcement, what advice would you give your clients if they are stopped for instance, for a traffic stop?
I always tell my clients to cooperate. Be nice, be friendly. no matter if you think that you're getting stopped because you're black, because you're a black male, because you're in the wrong neighborhood, on the side of the road is not the time to litigate that situation.
Right.
I was the guy that would fuss with police. Why are you stopping me?
No way.
It's because I'm a black guy, you know, before
In
I
your
went to
younger
law school.
years.
Yeah. And I learned quickly after that, like once I was in law school and even becoming a lawyer, that it's a power struggle. And law enforcement, a lot of them take the job to be in a power position, but they're going to win that struggle on the side of the road, you know. So if it's something that you think is wrong, then call me, call somebody else, or call Chief, Sheriff McNeil and say, hey, one of your deputies did something wrong, and have them investigated at that point. Because if you don't, it can escalate. You could get shot, you could get tasered, you could go to jail for something as simple as a speeding ticket. And they can do it just because you have a bad attitude. You know, I mean, so those things, if you're polite, if you're professional, then it should make the stop just what it is. And that's understanding as well that law enforcement, they do stop people because of how you look. They stop you because of the neighborhood that you're in. They stop you because of the kind of car that you drive. And we call those pretextual stops. It was a time probably about 20 years ago when those were illegal, but the Supreme Court said it's legal for law enforcement to stop you because of a pretextual reason.
Really?
And so, yeah, I mean, and so now it's used as a tactic. And I've had a lot of conversations with Chief DeLeo, with Sheriff McNeil about these pretextual stops because I think they're unfair. I don't think it's right that certain neighborhood, like if you live in a certain neighborhood, it's more likely that you'll get pulled over.
Okay, we're gonna take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we're gonna finish up that discussion.
Okay.
All right. Stay tuned for more conversations. Welcome back to Conversations with Nicole. We're here at the Edison at Cascade Park with attorney Mutaqee Akbar, and we're talking about law enforcement and the criminal justice system to some effect. So Mutaqee, we were talking about pretextual stops, which sounds a lot like profiling.
Yeah.
Can you expound upon that just a little bit?
I think it's one and the same. Personally, if you talk to law enforcement, they don't feel that way. They'll look at it as tactics used to kind of weed out crime, because you got to make the stops in order to get in the cars to search for guns and drugs and things like that. Like one of the officers, and I'm not going to name his name, of course, but some research that had been done on his stops. And come to find out, probably about 95% of the people that he pulled over were African-American males in 100-something stops. In those stops, one gun was found. Oh, wow. And not much drugs. And if you look at the statistics of the crime in Leon County by itself, you can see that it's really not, they stopped tons of people for these pretextual stops. But they're not getting the guns off the street. They're not stopping the violence. They're not getting the drugs off the street.
So by and large, it's really not all that effective.
It's not working. But what it's doing is driving a wedge into the community.
Right.
Because once these stops happen, then it's, hey, the K-9 unit has come. Can I search your car? It goes into these things that have nothing to do with the frame around your tag, which is illegal and people don't know that, but you can't have a frame around your tag. In Kalaran, you would never get stopped for that, but in South City, you would.
So where is our due process and our search and seizure? I mean, do we actually have rights, or do we just think we have rights?
You have rights.
Okay.
Law enforcement can't search your car without certain reasons that are there. One, they have to have, well, they don't have to. Like, one of the reasons could be probable cause. Probable cause could come from if they smell marijuana, for example, then they can have probable cause to search the car. If they're arresting you for something, they have probable cause to arrest you for something like drugs, or if they see stolen items in the car, then they can search the car to see if there's more stolen items in that car. They could get your consent, of course. And I usually advise people not to give consent, because if you give consent, you can't fight anything at that point.
Gotcha.
So make sure, so like if they don't have probable cause, then we can address that later on. Another way they could get probable cause if the K-9 comes and the K-9 alerts. My concern with that is that we can't question the K-9 to see what you smell, why you smelled it, why you alerted, but that's another way that they can get probable cause to search the vehicle as well. And some of those kind of coincide with searching your home, searching your person also, but those legal standards have to be in place before law enforcement can intrude on your private property, which would be your vehicle or your home or even your person. They can't search you unless they have probable cause, or to arrest you. If they don't have probable cause to arrest you, then they have to have a reasonable suspicion that you're committing a crime and that you're armed in order to just pat you down and go into your pocket.
Wow, well, we have covered a lot today, and I mean, I can sit here and talk to you for another hour.
It's a long conversation.
But I'm glad you joined us and shared these things with us. What's the best thing about what you do?
The best thing about what I do is I can help people. That I'm face to face with people every single day, and it's a thankless job, but every now and then we do get thanked, and that makes it all worth it.
Well, that's all the conversation we have time for today. Our food is here. We are at the Edison, and we are about to partake of this delicious meal. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Now through August 23rd, mention Conversations with Nicole and receive a 10% discount off your next purchase at the Edison Restaurant, located in Cascade Park.
We'd like to thank our guests, Leon County Sheriff Walt McNeil and attorney Mutaqee Akbar, for sharing their insights on law enforcement and citizens engagement. Join us next week at Maple Street Biscuit Company for a discussion about kidpreneurs with the Leo trio of Born Brilliant and entrepreneurship educator Professor LaTanya White. We'll see you next time. Okay, wait a minute.
Do I just look at her?
You look at me, but I'm trying to get it together. Okay.
Stare you down.
I know. I feel your eye all on me.